For decades, traditional publishing was the only option for authors hoping to share their stories with the world. While a handful of writers attempted to self-publish, with the likes of Beatrix Potter selling her work directly to others, all still had to secure traditional deals in the long run for their books to have any reach. And this meant that, for a variety of reasons, the majority who attempted to become commercial writers were outright banned from doing so, if their stories didn't fit within the boxes laid out by the publishers. All of this changed, however, as recently as a couple decades ago. With the advent of Kindle Direct Publishing and competitors like Ingram or Lulu, self-publishing has since become a viable option, not only for writers desperate to share their stories, but for creators in other niches hoping to supplement their businesses with journals or ebooks. Platforms like Wattpad allowed writers and readers to adjust to posting and interacting with stories online, without the need for a middleman. And other sites, like Archive of Our Own or even Tumblr, became the place for teen writers to practice their skills, with everyone from Cassandra Clare to Sarah J. Maas starting in such spaces. Though previously stigmatized, self-publishing has come a long way, even in the last 10 years, and a handful of self-published writers have begun to break through. While it's rare for self-published writers to achieve the same kind of fame as, say, J.K. Rowling or Sarah J. Maas, the publishing landscape is changing as we speak. For an example of a self-published author who has done well, BookTokers need look no further than Carissa Broadbent, whose fantasy series have been compared to ACOTAR. Many writers are even taking a hybrid approach, with big names like Brandon Sanderson producing their own work, relying on donations from fans and input from proofreaders to make their books the best they can be. Self-publishing won't be for everyone, and traditional publishing, depending on the kind of story you want to tell, is still a viable alternative, especially if you're in no particular rush and don't want the headache of producing your own story. As such, it's my belief that there are at least 6 reasons self-publishing is better than traditional, at least for authors. Before we dive in, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about books, discuss reading and writing, analyze my favorite stories, and offer the occasional writing advice. If that sounds like your cup of tea, hit that subscribe button to get more content like this. Self-publishing comes with its own trials, but as self-published books gain wider acceptance within the bookworm community, and the benefits of traditional publishing wane, like the offer for someone else to market your book, it's becoming increasingly attractive and easy for writers to release their own work. And here are 6 reasons why you should. Reason number 1, creative control. The biggest reason for me to self-publish is to retain creative control. I'm all for feedback, and if someone tells me a particular plot twist doesn't work, I wouldn't be opposed to changing it. That said, there's a comfort in having the final say, especially since every plot point, even an inconsequential one, usually exists in relation to a context only you understand. It's one thing if something is boring or doesn't make sense, but you still have to trust your gut. Ultimately, you're the authority on your story. You understand your characters, you created the world, and you probably have a rough idea where the story is supposed to go. In choosing to become traditionally published, you remove your right to the final say. Not all publishers are overbearing, with many authors enjoying the relationship they have with their chosen company. But it's something to consider, and authors have even been fired from their own series when they refused to take their stories in the directions their superiors demanded. Authors should be open to feedback and respectful of their editor's input. but they shouldn't be slaves to the opinions of others. And it suggests a lack of trust in you and your vision when publishers don't allow you to tell the story you set out to tell in the first place. For me, my books are my babies. They're incredibly personal to me, and while I'm willing to make changes to a degree, I'm not willing to compromise my vision. I'm not going to give up my story in favor of telling that of someone else. The idea of someone else having final say over something so close to my heart is honestly horrifying to me. And for that reason alone, I've always leaned towards self-publishing. Number 2, the ability to tell niche stories. Stories are becoming more diverse and unique all the time, even within the traditional landscape. And authors like Anne Rice and Angela Carter have proven that there's room for less conventional, even controversial stories within traditional publishing spheres. That said, there are still limitations, and even publishing houses who champion diversity still tend to look for stories which can be easily categorized. From a marketing standpoint, many gurus will tell you that your self-published book should be easy to categorize too, and there's wisdom in that. After all, readers have preconceived ideas. Something as simple as the cover design can tell readers what to expect, and many prefer to stick to one genre. Still, that doesn't mean you should try to copy what's already being done, though publishers will pressure you to do so, because it's less of a financial risk for them. Some of the stories which were traditionally published were rejected several times before being accepted, with those that finally were still being considered weird or quirky when they first released. When Charlene Harris's Southern Vampire Mysteries came out, they were unlike any books that had come before. Their popularity was such that they beget a new genre, that of fantasy romance, with mystery thrown in for good measure. These days, we take the genres of shifter romance or paranormal mystery for granted, and dozens of series, like The Vampire Diaries or Zodiac Academy, followed in their wake. The point is that Harris's books were unique, possibly outside the genre conventions of the time, but that didn't prevent them from selling. Unfortunately, for every Charlene Harris, there were the authors whose works were rejected, including those that might have created whole new genres. The tastes of readers and their expectations are ever shifting, but overly cautious publishers can prevent authors from engaging in this kind of experimentation, leading to a slew of all too similar books which readers eventually burn out on. Once everyone starts trying to copy Sarah J. Maas with their own fae romance, readers lose interest. In the end, readers might crave familiarity, but they also want something different. And if your story is a mixture of popular genres, but is unusual in some aspect, you might be better off self-publishing it, so as to avoid compromising your vision. Reason number 3, greater profits. There's no guarantee you'll make it rich as a self-published writer. In fact, your book will probably flop. That's just the reality. However, there's no added security for traditionally published writers either. For every Suzanne Collins, there's a writer who's given a contract to write one book and then never heard from again when that book fails to perform. You already have to do your own marketing, which means it's your BookTok following rather than the name of your publisher, which will garner you the sales. In other words, once you've handed your book over, you're still expected to do all the work promoting your story. This includes paying for any ads, boosting your posts, and putting in hours to script videos, all while the publisher pockets the majority of your profits. Amazon still takes the cut of profits from the authors on their platforms, and Ingram has gotten into trouble recently for tagging on fees. But what they take still pales in comparison to what publishers will take. and writers unhappy with Amazon can sell their work across competing platforms, or even from their own website if they want to keep 100% of the royalties. As a self-published writer, you'll need to cover the printing costs, but after any fees are deducted, all profits from your books are yours. Plus, ebooks don't come with a printing cost, leading to even higher gains. It could be argued that you'll never become a billionaire if you self-publish, because you'll never be given the same backing as someone like J.K. Rowling or Stephen King. But such authors are the exception rather than the rule. And among the average writer, self-published writers actually make more money. This is for a variety of reasons, but beyond pocketing full royalties, self-published writers can release their work faster, can entice readers with sequels even if the first book hasn't taken off yet, and can build out their work however they see fit, without limitations like contracts or long waits. Some self-published authors release as many as 4 books a year, something that isn't feasible for someone who is traditionally published. You might recall that Brandon Sanderson cranked out 4 books too, but he needed to go independent to do so. Number 4, safety from firing. It's become increasingly precarious to maintain your position within a company. Loyalty counts for little now, and while all industries are suffering from a lack of stability, publishing is no exception. Publishers have been placed in an awkward position. In addition to finding great stories, they are expected to act as judge and jury to the writers they employ. It's not enough for writers to be talented. Many readers also expect them to be perfect people, above making any mistakes. And publishers, desperate to maintain their margins, feel pressured to appease these angry customers. The result is that many writers are being fired from their own series, even if they've been with their publisher for 20 plus years. It's not just those with controversial opinions who are losing their livelihoods either. If you so much as agree with someone who's been blacklisted, you risk losing your job. In the case of one author who had enjoyed success for 2 decades, she had to become a truck driver when her publisher dumped her. There was no nuance, no discussion, no prompt for apology or review. In short, if you aren't perfect, there's always the risk your dream could be taken from you. Those locked into traditional contracts have subsequently had their free speech stifled. You have the right to free speech, but while you can't be arrested for saying the wrong thing, there are no laws to protect your career. As a self-published author, you aren't above risks. After all, if you get into trouble, your sales could still drop off and you could lose followers. But at the end of the day, you'll retain your most loyal readers, and you will still have the ability to release books as you see fit, with the profits that remain coming directly to you. You might not be planning to say anything controversial, but what's controversial is subjective, and by taking control of your own career path, you can remove that overhanging fear. Number 5. Retaining your rights. If you have to give up creative control over the stories you're telling, you also have to give up the rights. As noted in my last point, you could be fired from your own series, meaning ghostwriters will step in to finish your life's work, while you're forced to start from scratch, assuming you're able to continue writing at all. I've mentioned this before, but I'll bring it up again because it horrifies me. L.J. Smith, the creator of The Vampire Diaries, was removed from her own series when the publishers disagreed with the direction she wanted to take her stories in. Creating a name for herself and churning out bestsellers for the company she served, she should have earned a certain degree of trust. Her stories were adapted into television, proof in itself that she had talent, but her publishers were unwilling to take a chance on her. Smith's passion for the series was such that she self-published a number of follow-up stories, so that her fans might read the true ending of her series. However, as she didn't own the rights to the series any longer, she did not profit from these works. Essentially, to bring her story to its conclusion, she had to pen fan fiction for her own series, and in time, these books were taken down, leaving fans unable to read her version. Smith was a big name. She wasn't Rowling or King, but her name was featured in prominence on the covers, and the publishers continued to capitalize on her fame, slapping her name onto the sequels penned by ghostwriters with the hope that readers would still assume she was involved. For me, it's an unimaginable scenario. As I said in the first part of this video, my books are everything to me. They're my babies, and if someone took away the stories that meant so much to me, I'd honestly be tempted to give up writing. Certainly authors can start new series, but we have an emotional attachment to our work that's hard to explain. To sign away my books to someone else would be, for me, like signing away my brain or my heart. At number 6, we have quicker production. Many of the reasons on this list have been emotional, but this one is more practical. From a business perspective, self-publishing can be more lucrative. While you have to pay for everything yourself, you pocket the profits and control production. More than that, you have the luxury of writing as quickly or as slowly as you want. You set the release date, and your having a timely release isn't contingent on someone else's schedule. Even after you're accepted by a traditional publisher, it could take years before your book sees the light of day. This is because you aren't the priority of your publisher. They have hundreds of books to pump out, and so it could be weeks before your editor even has a chance to look at your story, to say nothing of the cover designer or formatter. While writers like Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros get the luxury of having multiple releases in a year, your book will have to wait until it's proven itself. Therefore, any sequels could be considerably delayed too, if you're permitted to publish one at all. Self-published writers, conversely, can release 4 books in a year because there are no distractions. They have full control of the production process, meaning that their books are given undivided attention. When a self-published writer hires an editor, it can be a matter of weeks before the book is released, and those who have been doing it long enough fall into a rhythm: write the book, edit it, release it, and repeat. Writers can promise their readers a release, even if they've just started the rough draft, because they know how long it's going to take. In the long run, this means more profits for the writer, because the only impediment to a writer sharing their work is their ability to create and polish the work itself. Self-publishing won't be for everyone, and it comes with its own challenges, not the least of which is the cost to produce a book. But it can be a better option than traditional publishing, whether that's for reasons of creativity, emotion, or practicality. Regardless of your motivation for self-publishing, be it the desire to keep your rights or make more money, these have been my 6 reasons why self-publishing is better. There will always be people who think self-published works are less worthy, since anyone can do it, and the publishing community is rife with heated opinions, not the least being that a self-published book should always have an editor. Many offering advice posit that a lack of editing is the reason for the stigma self-published authors suffer. They note that by releasing a bad book, you're tarnishing the reputation of your fellow writers. But there will always be good books, and there will always be bad books, and it's hard to believe that your one story could have that kind of impact. Plenty of traditionally published books have disappointed too. Even the popular ones have turned readers off, or been panned by critics, and it comes down to reader preference in the end, regardless of whether or not your book is Pulitzer worthy. Those telling writers they must have an editor always gloss over the obvious obstacle: the price, which for many is too high. That's why in this video, I argue against hiring an editor. going on to explain why the need for one could be a form of gatekeeping. And if you still need to write your story, you can click this video for my tips on keeping your butt in the chair. Thank you for watching, and happy writing!